Welcome to everybody, and also welcome to the ninth seminar in a series of research seminars hosted by Nomadic Labs. So today's speaker is Benoît Rognier. After 8 years in predictive learning applied to marketing, Benoît co-created Educera, an online educational application that allows students to solve hundreds of mathematical exercises in some kind of formal papers that provides automatic correction. And since 2016, more than 500,000 exercises have been solved in Educera. But today, Benoît is here to talk about Archetype. Archetype is a high-level domain-specific language for Tezos smart contracts with unique concept on top of Michelson, like new data types, for instance, duration or rational and so on. And also assets, which is a kind of a pseudo-SQL inspired storage, for instance. So in that language, key smart contracts concepts like roles and execution condition and so on are made explicit, concise, and easy to read thanks to dedicated instructions. So Archetype provides a specification language, and it can also be transcoded to YML for verification in the Y3 platform for deductive verification. And so in this talk, the benefits of Archetype will be illustrated through pedagogical app examples. So Benoît, welcome, it's up to you. Let's go.
Thank you for attending the programming language to develop smart contracts on the Tezos blockchain. So I'm very glad to present it to you today because we started the development of Archetype 2 years ago, and we consider that it has come to maturity and that it is now ready for production. So. Okay, so what is a smart contract basically? So it's a program that runs on the blockchain, but it's not an ordinary program. So it has some constraints in size and complexity. So basically, a smart contract is short and is not supposed to be CPU intensive. So the main issue with smart contract is that it's a highly critical piece of code, okay? And it is so because people come to the blockchain to benefit from a trusted, decentralized execution of transactions. And the issue is that this benefit can be totally erased or annihilated if the smart contract does not behave as expected. So has a short and not too complex piece of code, a smart contract is a good candidate for program verification to address this issue. So program verification is a very good way to address that. However, it has its own limitation. Well, typically the guarantee you get is limited to the property you are able to verify. So that's why another way to address the issue is standard code review. Okay, so which is still a very valid approach. So the question we want to start with is actually, can the programming language help to address these issues, to address the trust issue that you must have in the smart contract? So as you imagine, our answer is yes. Okay, so and this is so because of the very limited complexity of the contract and the specific requirements it has. So we think that it can be embedded in a language, in the programming language, to help verify the contract and to help read the contract. So that's how we designed Archetype as a domain-specific language, which provides a high-level design of smart contracts, and it does that with dedicated syntax and features, so that it's very easy to implement the business logic of the contract. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to illustrate that straightforwardly. So first thing, the first question, when you look at a smart contract, you look at an entry point of the smart contract. The first question, you want to know who can call the contract, under which condition the contract can be executed. So I will switch to a real live demo now for this one. Okay, so let me, okay. Okay, so we just create a quick so we just create so ARL is the extension for archetype language. Okay, so hopefully you will be able to see that. So we provide a VS Code extension for syntax highlighting and type checking. So we'll do that. Archetype, I will create a very basic one just to illustrate that. So here I will create in the storage a variable named evalue and typed nat, for example. I will provide it a default value, and I will create an entry point, okay, with an argument. Whoops again. Okay, and very simple. I will just say that a value is assigned the parameter. Okay. So based on that, let's say we would like to specify who can call the entry, and under which condition. So to do that, for example, let's say that you want only a specific address, let's say the admin of the contract typically. You only want a specific address to be able to call that. So what you will do, you will, for example, declare an admin variable, typed address, okay, and you will say something like that. So you have this kind of syntax to say that you only want the entry to be called by admin, and you have now to put the effect on the storage in the effect section. Okay. So let me just retrieve a real address. I will very quickly. Oh. Let me just retrieve. Okay, so that's a real address declared on the IDO network, but okay, no issue, no problem. So here, so this syntax here is here to say. So when you read that, you know that okay, only the admin address can call this this entry, and now we can add some execution conditions with some very specific syntax. Let's say that, for example, we require that V to be greater than 10, for example. Okay, you can here actually list all the conditions to execute that. For example, you could say that the date of execution should be, I don't know, above yesterday, for example, whatever. So let's hard code for the moment the date of yesterday, for example. So 03 minus 15, for example. Okay. Okay. So here you have a very so this pattern that you see here. So who can call and what is the list of required conditions to be able to execute is a very common pattern when designing smart contracts, and so that's why we wanted the language to reflect that, so that it's very easy to read and write. Okay, so the extension come with the compilation command. So it's very straightforward to compile to Michelson. So you just click on that, and here you are. You have the Michelson code. Okay. Last, we can just note that for example, let me go back to the Michelson. So here we see that R1 and R2 are used to identify when the condition fails. Okay, but you can also put your own string here. For example, should be above 10. Okay. Okay. So here up you have the. So okay. So that pattern is very common. And now what I'm going to do for the next features, I'm going to use the site named Complicium here. So Complicium is a site we developed for developers to learn how to develop dApps for the Tezos with the Tezos ecosystem. Okay. So this site is not is online, but we will release it officially, I guess, in the coming weeks, hopefully next week. So it comes with 9 real dApp examples across different domains like governance, DeFi, marketing, and so on. Okay, so the one I would like to illustrate archetype with is the first one is IDBox. So IDBox. So you can open the dApp. So all dApps are online on the Edo network. So what IDBox provides you with, it provides you with a way to add an ID and vote for existing IDs. Okay. So if we go to the smart contract, which is behind the interface, so you see here the real interface, which is online. Let me, for example, connect to the wallet. So here we are using, in this example, the Temple wallet. Let me select this account, for example. Okay, so once connected, you see your address here, and each voter has 5 IDs to vote for. So here I have 3 left, and I can go through all the IDs posted and created, and say, for example, yeah, I like this one. I like this ID, so I want to vote for it. So that will generate a transaction to the blockchain. Okay, so the smart contract. So actually, the interface here is interacting with a smart contract deployed on the Edo network, on the test network, and it uses the Temple wallet and the Taquito library for that. Okay, so let's have a look at the interface and what I wanted to show you. Well, typically the register. So here we have a very live example of what we show. You see that the register entry point can only be called by the chairman, and it requires that the smart contract be in a specific state. Okay, so you will see that this pattern is very common. For example, when you vote, when you are a user and you just vote the entry point vote to vote for an ID, you see here a list of execution conditions. Okay, so that's a very common, very useful, very straightforward, and very easy to read the logic behind an entry point. Okay, so next. So next feature. Next feature is a state machine. So actually, it's possible to design the smart contract as a state machine, which is very convenient, again, to convey the business logic behind that is implemented by the smart contract. So for that, let me go to another DApp example. Let me check. Okay, so here we are more on the DeFi side. So here it's what we call zero coupon bond. So this DApp that I'm going to open right now. So this DApp actually is an online, simulates an online financial contract editor that you can parameterize and originate on the blockchain. So for example, here we are dealing with a zero coupon bond, and for example, in order to originate that, you first have to enter the name of the issuer. You can specify. You have to specify its address, subscriber. You can specify another address, and so on. Then you have to specify the face value, and so on and so on. So you have a certain amount of parameter to set, and once it's set, you can originate the financial contract on the blockchain straightforwardly from the DApp. Okay. Okay, so I will connect to the DApp. I will take again let's see this one, for example. Okay, so you see that when every parameter is filled, then you just have to click on issue contract, and the DApp will originate the contract. So let's have a look at the contract itself. So it's designed as a state machine. So in the documentation of the DApp, you see here the very simple. It's a very simple state machine, but still it's interesting to have that to be able to communicate the logic very quickly. So what it does, it starts in the created state, and then it requires that the holder and the issuer of the contract both sign the contract to go to the signed state, and then once in the signed state, you can either dispute the contract or terminate the contract. You dispute the contract if there is no payback, for example, because there is a payback period which is defined in the contract, and if the payback does not happen in the predefined time window, then you can dispute the contract. Or if everything goes right, you can hopefully terminate the contract. Okay, so this is a state machine. So let's have a very quick look at how it's implemented. It's very simple. You just declare the state of the machine, and then you have access to this kind of the transition, which is actually an entry point, but which comes with the possibility to change the state of the contract. Okay, so transition may have a condition to be able to transition and an effect beyond the change of state. Okay, so here we have the to signed, which can go from created to signed, and it has an effect which is to store the signature date. Okay, if we go to implementation, let's have a look here at a more complex transition. So transition terminate here is interesting because you see that it has a condition and an effect. Okay, so you will be able to go from signed to terminated if you are in signed state, if you have this logic business condition, and you will be able to have an effect. And here the effect is to make some transfer of tests from one account to another, from the contract to here to the subscriber. Okay, so very convenient way, very easy to design and to read because it's all is very dedicated. Okay. So actually, in the DApp, in the list of DApps we have here, we have many state machines. I guess this one, which is an escrow, is using a state machine. The ID box, actually, we can go back to ID box, and we would see that ID box is also designed as a state machine. Very simple, very straightforward. It starts with activated and terminated, and the terminated. The terminate, transition is here. Okay, so here transition it can only be called by German, and it goes from activity to terminate, and it has some effect. Okay, we will go to the effect of that very soon. Okay, so next. So here we have some archetypes provide some specific data types. For example, rational and duration, which are very convenient to express business logic. So, for example, you can declare a discount as a 14% and apply that discount very easily in a very simple formula like that on an amount of days. For example, face value here would be an amount of days, and if you want to compute a new amount of days, by applying a discount, you can, for example, very easily write that formula. So this is very convenient. So this one is actually taken from the zero coupon bond example. So we can just see it in action here. Let's go to smart contract. Let's go to the interface of the smart contract. So you see here the discount, 14%. And let's see how it's used here. So when one of the signer, either the subscriber, well, when the subscriber is actually calling this entry point, you see that the present value is calculated like that. Then there is an explicit test about that. I mean, this is actually the amount of tests that the issuer has to transfer to the subscriber. Sorry, has to transfer to the issuer. So you see, this is done like that. Okay, so you just compute, you just say that, and then you just transfer it. Okay, so very convenient way to implement business logic. Another more complex example, we won't go in detail on that, but just to show you that one DApp is actually a DEX, a decentralized exchange, very similar to Uniswap and Dexter. And it comes again with some more complex formula to implement. And here, so here in the documentation, you see we show all the. Okay, so we don't want to go in details, obviously, but here you see typically you have to implement this kind of exchange rate somehow. And let's see how it's done. So typically that would look like so. So you see this kind of function will be very straightforward to write whatever the formula. So you can really multiply, divide, and so on. So it makes it very easy to write this kind of formula. Okay, very convenient. Okay, so let's move on. Duration, yes. So duration is also convenient. So it comes with some very convenient way to explicitly declare durations with some nice literals like 5 seconds, 1 day, 3 weeks. You can also combine them all together. And of course, you can add a duration to a date to obtain a new date. You can subtract and so on, and you can compare. So typically, let me show you an example of that. If we go to the zero coupon bond example we saw, I think, yeah. So here you have a typical example of the way you can use date, duration, and compare all that. So typically here you specify that now should be in the payback duration. To terminate that, you have to be in the payback duration, which is defined as the signature days plus maturity duration. That is the start of it, and the end of it is a signature, maturity date, and payback duration. Okay, so typically here that will be very convenient. And the way you declare that is by just declaring duration like that. So here you have a 1 month duration. Okay, so maturity duration 1 month, payback duration 1 month. Okay, so again that will be quite convenient. Okay, what time is it? Okay, it's good. What else? So the next one is very interesting as well. So it's a storage type, what we call asset. So an asset is a collection of identified record. So for example, in the ID box, the contract stores all the IDs that are posted by users. So typically here you would declare an asset called ID with this information. So typically, you could say, well, it's a set of records. Yes, it's a set of records, but they are identified. It is ordered. So every asset is well, the assets are ordered according to the identifier. And the key point here is that it comes with a very rich collection, very rich API, so that you can add, remove, update, add, update very easily an asset to the collection, and then you can interrogate the collection with select, head, tail, sort, sum. Okay, so that's very convenient. So it will make it very easy to write what you want to do with your collection of data. So if we go back to the ID, if we go back to the ID box, example, if we have a look at the terminate, so to go to the terminated state, actually, it means that the chairman decides to select the best IDs. And he wants, typically, there is a small collection dedicated to selected, the set of selected IDs here. So what he has to do at the end is to pick the best one. So this is typically how you would do that. So if we have a look, what we are going to do, we say, okay, ID.select NB votes greater than 5. So this will select the ID with more than 5 votes. Then you will sort that in decreasing NB votes, and then you will take the top 3. Okay, so you see that very quickly you can say, okay, for every ID with more than 5 votes, I want to sort them and take the top 3. Okay, so you see that here it will be very, very convenient, very straightforward to do that. So when you read that code, it's very concise and you see everything. You know that only the chairman can call. You know that it changes the state and it has some effect. It will add the selected ID to the asset collection of selected IDs. Okay, so very convenient. Another example is here what we call fidelity program. So it's marketing. It's more in the marketing area. So the situation here is that you, as a user, you collect miles from your activity with a service, and then you can go online to spend the miles. Okay, so we can have a very quick look at that. It's not Thanos. It's a wallet. It's now called Temple. Okay, so we can connect. So you see here the goodies you can now collect. So let's connect with this account, for example. No, not enough miles. Okay, so I have here 35 miles to spend here, so I can select any goodies. For example, this cap here, it's good, so I want it, and so on and so on. So that will trigger a transaction to consume the miles. So actually, the smart contract here is responsible for managing the miles you possess. Okay. So let's see the consume entry. Oh, here. So the consume entry, we won't go in details here. I just want to show you how to express that kind of thing. So here, let's have a very quick look at the assets first. So we have an asset called mile, and it has a number of miles and the expiration date. Yes, here the specificity of the miles is that they can expire. So it means that when you're going to consume, you have to check first the expiration date. Okay, and they are stored in a very specific way. Actually, you are not storing mile by the unit, but you store an amount of miles that expire on the same date. Okay, so when you consume them, you have to be a bit careful about that. That's why the implementation of the consume is a bit tricky here. But you see that here, what we do, the first thing we do is you say, okay, you are the caller, so I want to retrieve the miles, your miles of the one calling, and then I want to sort them and to select the ones that are not yet expired. Okay, because it could be very possible that the ones that are expired are not cleaned. Okay, for some reason. Okay, so you really have to select that. Okay, and here the nice thing here is that you can check very easily that the amount of these miles are that you have enough miles with respect with the quantity you want to consume, and it will be done very, very easily by just the sum operator on the view here. So what we have here, we have the collection, and here when you do that, you create actually what we call a view, which is a kind of a read-only collection to do that. Okay, so you see it's very very convenient to interrogate the collection according to specific criteria. Okay, for that, I can show you very quickly the last thing. So we saw how to read a collection, how to iterate on that, and the basic thing is also to of course to be able to add. So let's go to the very standard. So the FR 1.2, which is the Tezos standard for fungible token. Okay, so it has in the specification it has a transfer entry point, and you see that the transfer entry point is quite trivial here because in terms of changing, so in terms of updating the value when transferring, the number of values. It's quite simple. So you have an asset called a ledger, which stores the number of tokens a holder has. Okay. So when you transfer, you have to decrement the one you are transferring from and increment the one you are transferring to. Okay. So you see that this is done very straightforwardly with these two lines instruction, one to update and one to add update. So here we have an add update instruction to modify the collection, because it's very possible that there is no that the to address doesn't have any token yet. So you have to not only update but add if it doesn't exist. Okay, so that will be done like that, very very straightforward. Okay, so that's it for the asset. Okay. So let's move on now. So I have 10 minutes left. So yes, as just to finish on the language side, if it's you have to know that actually all Michelson types and built-ins are available in Archetype. Okay, so I can show you that quite very. So I will open a specific URL. So in this contract, we have gathered all the types and literals that are available in Archetype. Okay, so you see, okay, Boolean, NAT, int, rational. We talked about that. So you can declare, okay, strings, tes, mutes, of course, all the kind of dates, of course, and you see duration. You can combine all the literals like week, day. So that would be 3 week, 8 day, 4 hours, 30 minutes, 18 seconds. Okay, and here you are. You have the basic Michelson storage types, set, list, map, and so on. You have tuples, of course, options, and so on, and bytes, and so on. Okay. So you have everything actually. Yeah, everything is available. Okay, so now to finish on the presentation, just a few words on the verification side. So I'm not going to dive into too much detail. I just want to show you a little bit the specification language, but I'm not going to do the exercise to verify from scratch an existing contract. That could be the subject of another presentation. So just to recap, archetypes provide a specification language, a Y3 output, and a Y3 library or theory, which includes all the theory to prove things on assets and the definition of a sum, select, and all the operators we saw in the code. Okay, so has the schema just to recap, as a quick recap of what it does. So starting from an ARL code, actually, what we saw right now, we saw the code that you can write to see how it should be executed. So we saw that this is compiled straightforwardly to Michelson. But we will see that you can also add specification, and that will be generated to YML. Okay, so YML is the language of the Y3 platform, and Y3 is a very powerful platform for deductive programming to prove things thanks to solvers. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that today, but that's the way it works. So mainly, what I want you to get about that is that what you can do with the specification language, you can write contract invariants and entry point post conditions. Okay, so a contract invariant is a property that is always true, a property about the contract storage, typically, that is always true regardless of the transaction history. Okay, so a good example here is the FR 1.2. So the fungible token specification. So we did an implementation in Archetype and the full specification and verification of the contract. So let me just show you. I will open that. I put it here. Yep. Okay. So here it is. So very basically, so here at the top of the file, you have all the declaration of the asset here. Then you have the implementation of the entry points. And in the second part, you have the entire specification. And you see that in order to declare a contract invariant, it's quite straightforward. You just write that in the specification section. So that will be this will have to be proved as a contract invariant. Okay, so this one is saying that if you take the sum of tokens on the total number of tokens owned by all holders, it should always be equal to total supply, because, well, in this specification, no token can be minted. Okay, so there should be no leak of tokens. Okay, so that's typically a contract invariant. And what you can also do, you can specify entry point post condition. So that's a post condition is a property about the contract storage after the call to the entry point is executed. Okay, and of course this property can refer to the state before execution, thanks to the before keyword. Okay, so typically in this if you want to say that under certain conditions a collection of assets doesn't change, is exactly the same. You could write something like that. So if from equal to, then the ledger after should be equal to the ledger before. Okay, so that's another way to do that. Okay. Okay, so when you have that, you have in the VS Code, you have a command to output, to generate the YML format of the contract. Okay. So here now, what you would have to do. So here you have it's quite a big file, but you have to. Yeah, so the contract itself is here. So here you have the declaration of the storage, and then you have the declaration of the entry point in another module. So what you would have to do now is to open Y3 and try to launch the solvers on that. So Y3 is going to translate again this contract to proof obligations for the solvers. Okay. So we're not going to cover that. Okay, for that. So that's it for, yeah, you can also specify a failing condition, but I don't really have time to cover that. It's no big deal. Okay. Last thing that I wanted to mention today, we are working on a decompiler of Michelson. So it's still in a prototype phase. So, but I just wanted to mention it. So the principle is that, well, the starting point was that we wanted to be able not only to verify archetype smart contract, but we also wanted to verify any contract written in archetype. Written not in archetype, but in Michelson. Sorry. Okay, so the way we are going to do that is we are currently developing the decompilation process from Michelson to archetype. Okay, so following this process, we'll be able to obtain a kind of a YML version of the Michelson contract. So what it's not released yet, it's still in prototype phase, but what we, just to give you a flavor on what it's going to look like, we worked on the C3N contract, which is a contract which was developed in Michelson by the French police department against cyber crime. It was done, I guess, a bit like 1 year ago. I don't think it's still active, but it's a real Michelson contract deployed on the mainnet. We can have a look. I think I linked that to the Better Call Dave contract indexer just to have a look at the code. Yeah, so you see it has only 23 operations, so transactions, so it's not really active anymore. So here we are. So this is the code that was handwritten in Michelson. And with the decompiler, we will be able to have an archetype view of that code. So what I'm showing you here is an intermediate stage. So we don't have the final archetype code yet. We are working on it, but still it can start to give a good idea of what it does. So here we have totally removed the stack machine aspect of the program, and we have already translated the program to a more procedural archetype-like language. Okay, so you see here affectation of local variables, then an iteration, and you have some condition of failing. You have some affectation again and again. Okay, so that will. So we are still working on it, but it should come soon. Yeah. And just as a side note, this is a handwritten archetype version of the contract, just for you if you are curious to know exactly what it does. It doesn't do much actually, but okay, no, it's very, very simple actually in archetype to see what it does. It has some tests. It tests typically if the caller is in the admin list, which is in the storage. And then if so, it just replaces the new hash, and if the first argument, which is an option of list of address, is specified, then you assign it to the storage, and that's it. Okay, so very, very simple. Okay, so let me check that. Yeah, I'm already late. So just want to thank the team and to mention the team working on the project, who has been working on the project. So Pierre-Yves Strub is acting as a chief scientist scientific officer. He's a lecturer at Polytechnic. He's a member of the LIX lab, and he's a lead developer on EasyCrypt and Jasmin. And Guillaume and I, we are co-founder of Educera. And Guillaume has been acting as a lead dev on Archetype, and myself, I've been a dev and a project coordinator. Okay, so if you want to start with Archetype, you have this resource. So there is an online site which links to several resources. So you have a website, you have a documentation. Sorry, you have a documentation site. You have the GitHub, of course, everything is open source. And don't hesitate to follow us on Twitter to be notified when the completion website will be released, for example, or when there is a new release of the Archetype decompiler, for example. So don't hesitate for that. Thank you very much. And now I think we have like 10 minutes left for questions.
Very interesting. So please, everybody, feel free to ask your question directly on the chat, okay? And I will, of course, read them to Benoit. So Benoit, maybe I can start. I have some questions for you. You have shown in your talk that Archetype can be compiled directly to Michelson, right? To YML. So I have a question in two parts. Right. And so about the compilation scheme to Michelson, can you say just a word about that? Is it a tricky compilation schema? Does it produce efficient programs and so on? And okay, yeah.
Yes. So actually, no, I can answer that right away. I mean. Maybe some of you know that we started with another process to obtain Michelson. At the beginning, the Archetype project was supposed to transcode, to transpile to other languages like SmartPy and Lego, for example. But for many reasons, we had to give up somehow this approach. And there was several reasons for that. The first one was that we had some, because of the way we were transcoding, we had some efficiency issues. I mean, the contract we were generated were a bit too big, so it was not very suitable for production. And the other issue we had with that, I mean, when we came to the project of verifying any contract written in Michelson, it was obvious that we needed to be able to go back from Michelson. And once you know how to go back from Michelson, it's pretty straightforward to go to Michelson. So actually, all that combined, we decided last summer to do a straightforward compilation. So now the performance is quite good actually. It's similar to what you have with other languages. So we are quite happy with that. It has solved our main issue so far for production, which was performance. But
so
now it's
we have a question in the chat, and actually, yeah. So the second part of my question was more or less related to that. So you were asking, so what are the concurrent models you take in order to verify transaction flow? So you can compile just Archetype to YML, okay? And so in that framework, so if you want to reason about transaction flow, for instance, how can you do that?
Yeah, so that's a tricky part of the verification. So as we saw, we do contract invariant, so global contract invariant and post conditions, which means it's straightforwardly doesn't take into account a history of transaction. So if you wanted to do that, you would have to actually you could do that in YML with the approach. It would be a bit tricky because you would have to somehow take the context of transaction into account. and to implement that in YML. So
okay,
yeah,
but so that's not the case
tricky.
at the moment. So you cannot reason about this this flow. Okay.
Yeah, not straightforwardly. You would have to develop on your own on the YML side. On top of the contract that was generated, you would have to add information about the transaction history and
so that's for the blockchain history, let's say. And similarly, if you want, that's another question which is also related. If you would like to reason about interaction between contracts, so how can you do that?
Yeah, again, that's a more higher. That's even a higher level than it's a bit higher level than what we do currently. So again, you would have to develop a theory about that in YML to do that. So for example, for now, we do not provide out of the box a framework.
As you mentioned, that maybe there is some work to be done for developing some kind of theories. I was wondering, what are are you using some specific theories currently when you want to prove some properties for your smart contract? Because we have seen that you can write stuff about durations, about dates, for instance, and also there are some arithmetic part in your contract. So can you say a little bit how you translate that in YML and what kind of theories you are using?
So for the so Akita comes with a dedicated library, a dedicated theory for all the concepts in the language, and we developed everything from on our side. So for example, for the asset part, it comes with a theory that we wrote ourselves for that, for the specific need of the archetype language. For the list and so on, we rely very much on the standard library of Y3, and for specific types, we wrote the theory.
And I was also, sorry to be on this very this verification part again. I was wondering if you need some kind of inductive reasoning in order to prove properties or not. I mean, because you're using because in your program you have a data structure. Okay, that maybe you would need some kind of inductive reasoning.
We don't know. I think the types are too simple. I would say they are not really inductive, so we don't really have the need for that. It's too simple for someone.
Okay, I mean, even if you handle just sets, for instance, maybe you want to reason inductively about sets, but I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. On that part for sets, I think we rely on the standard library.
Okay, so thank you again, Benoit, for your presentation and this very wonderful work on that design.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.